I am Amelia, 32 years old, a senior financial analyst at Horizon Innovations. What started as routine quarterly report preparation turned into the biggest corporate scandal of my career. My boss Marcus always had suspicious business trips that never aligned with actual company events. Today, I am standing in for him at the board meeting while he is away on an urgent off-site meeting. Little does he know, I have discovered $320,400 in questionable expenses. Before I tell you how I exposed this massive fraud drop, a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button to see more stories of workplace justice being served. My journey at Horizon Innovations began 7 years ago when I joined as an entry-level accountant, fresh out of my MBA program. Through dedication and countless late nights, I worked my way up to senior financial analyst. Horizon was not just any workplace. It was a prestigious tech firm that prided itself on innovation, integrity, and transparency. At least that was what the company mission statement claimed. The sleek glass headquarters in downtown Seattle reflected our modern approach to business, and most employees genuinely believed in those values. Enter Marcus Reynolds, 42 years old, the charismatic head of our financial department. With his designer suit's perfect smile and impressive industry connections, Marcus was someone everyone wanted to impress. He had a way of making people feel special when he gave them attention. I was no exception. When he first took me under his wing, I felt honored. He praised my attention to detail and analytical skills, even inviting me to sit in on executive meetings to gain exposure. I still remember the day he took me aside after I completed a particularly challenging financial forecast. His office was a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows and contemporary art on the walls. Everything about his workspace screamed success. "Amelia, you have a natural talent for this," he said, leaning back in his ergonomic chair. "That probably cost more than my monthly rent. I see a bright future for you here." His words made me feel validated. Here was someone at the top recognizing my potential. What I did not realize then was how calculated his mentorship was. Marcus never invested in people unless they served a purpose in his grand scheme. The first signs of trouble were subtle. Expense reports with unusually high totals would cross my desk. When I asked questions, Marcus always had a plausible explanation. Client entertainment at exclusive restaurants. Last-minute first-class flight upgrades due to scheduling changes. Extended stays at luxury hotels because meetings ran long. Each individual instance seemed justifiable in isolation. Then there were his increasingly frequent absences. Marcus would announce important business trips to meet investors or attend industry conferences. Our department would scramble to cover his responsibilities, and I often found myself handling tasks above my pay grade. "Consider it valuable experience," he would say with a wink, before departing with his premium luggage. The changes in his behavior happened gradually. Marcus became more secretive, password protecting files that had previously been accessible to the finance team. He started taking phone calls in the stairwell instead of his office. More closed-door meetings with people I did not recognize. One evening while working late, I overheard Marcus in a heated conversation. His office door was slightly ajar, and his voice carried down the empty hallway. "We need to be more careful about covering our tracks," he hissed into the phone. "The quarterly audit is coming up. Just follow my lead and everything will be fine." When he emerged and saw me at my desk, his expression momentarily darkened before he regained his composure. "Burning the midnight oil again. Amelia, dedication like yours is rare these days," he said smoothly. But something in his eyes had changed. He was assessing me, calculating how much I might have heard. Not everyone at Horizon remained blind to Marcus. Diana Patel, our human resources director, always maintained professional politeness around him, but never seemed fully convinced by his charm. James Whitman, the chief financial officer, occasionally questioned some of Marcus's decisions, though he typically deferred to Marcus's explanations about changing market conditions or special circumstances. My closest ally was Richard Thompson, a fellow analyst who had been with the company even longer than I had. Richard had a quiet integrity about him, never participating in office, politics, or the competitive culture Marcus subtly encouraged among team members. Be careful around Reynolds, Richard warned me during a coffee break after seeing how much extra work I was taking on for Marcus. I have seen how he operates. He builds people up, uses them, and then discards them when they are no longer useful or when they start asking too many questions. I brushed off his concerns at first. Success often breeds jealousy, I reasoned. Besides, Marcus had done nothing but support my career advancement. Yet the unease continued to grow. During a department review of quarterly expenses, I pointed out several travel charges that seemed excessive even by executive standards. Marcus, the receipt for the hotel in London, shows $2,000 per night for 4 nights. Our policy caps accommodation at $500 per night unless pre-approved. Was there special authorization for this? Marcus barely looked up from his phone. Of course. James signed off on it. All the necessary approvals are in place. The London market is expensive, and I was meeting with potential investors worth millions to the company. Something about his dismissive tone bothered me, but I dropped it. Later, when I casually asked James about the London expenses, his confused expression told me everything I needed to know. He had no recollection of approving such an extravagant exception to company policy. That was when the first real seeds of doubt were planted. What else had Marcus been lying about? And more importantly, why was nobody checking? I will be unavailable next week, Marcus announced during our Monday morning team meeting. Critical business meetings in Paris with potential European investors. Amelia, I need you to handle the quarterly financial report preparation in my absence. He slid a folder across the table to me. Everything you need should be in here. Just compile the data as usual. Nothing fancy required. Something in his tone seemed off. This would be the 3rd international trip this quarter alone, and the timing was suspicious. The board meeting was scheduled for the day he would return, leaving no time for him to review the presentation I was preparing. Any specific areas you want me to focus on? I asked. Just the standard report, he replied dismissively. Keep it simple. The board members have limited attention spans for financial details. That comment struck me as odd. Our board consisted of seasoned executives and financial experts who definitely paid attention to numbers. It almost seemed like Marcus wanted me to provide a superficial overview. After everyone else had left the conference room, Richard lingered behind. Another convenient trip, he murmured, organizing his notes. 3rd time this quarter he has been unavailable during key preparation periods. I nodded, not wanting to voice my suspicions out loud. But that night I decided to dig deeper. The office was nearly empty at 9:30. Only the cleaning staff and a few dedicated workaholics remained. I had told myself I would just get ahead on the quarterly report, but my true purpose was different. With most colleagues gone, I could investigate without curious eyes watching. I started by pulling all of Marcus's expense reports for the past year. At first glance, everything looked properly documented with receipts and appropriate business justifications, but as I cross-referenced dates and locations, discrepancies emerged. A dinner charged in New York, on the same date as a flight to Chicago. Hotel expenses that extended several days beyond scheduled conferences. Double submissions for the same travel dates under different project codes. The most telling discovery came when I compared his supposed meeting schedule with actual company calendar events. Multiple times, Marcus had claimed to be meeting clients who, according to our customer relationship management system, had no scheduled interactions with our company on those dates. My heart raced as the pattern became clearer. This was not just sloppy expense reporting. This was systematic fraud. Around midnight, Richard texted me. Still at the office. Saw your light on when I was leaving. Everything okay? I hesitated before responding. Just prepping for the board report. Found some interesting discrepancies. Can we talk tomorrow? The next morning, Richard and I met at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the office, away from corporate ears and eyes. I have noticed similar issues, he admitted after I shared my findings. Last year, I questioned some expense allocations and suddenly found myself removed from the audit committee. Marcus claimed it was to give me more time for client analytics, but the timing was suspicious. How long do you think this has been going on? I asked. Richard sipped his coffee thoughtfully. Based on when his spending patterns changed, I would guess about 18 months. It started small, probably, to test what he could get away with. The amounts have increased significantly each quarter. Armed with this confirmation, I expanded my investigation. I created a spreadsheet tracking every suspicious transaction, noting patterns, and calculating totals. By the third day, I had documented over $200,000 in questionable expenses. By the end of the week, that figure had grown to $320,400. The most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. While searching for supporting documentation in our shared drive, I stumbled upon a folder labeled Market Research Analysis 2023. It contained hundreds of photos, apparently automatically uploaded from Marcus's company phone. These were not market research. They were vacation photos. Marcus on pristine beaches at exclusive resorts, dining at sunset restaurants. And in most of them, he was accompanied by a striking woman who definitely was not his wife Susan, whom I had met at company Christmas parties. In several images, they were clearly intimate. Looking closer at the metadata and locations, I realized these photos aligned perfectly with his supposed business trips. Paris, Bali, the Maldives, all disguised as investor meetings or industry conferences. The woman appeared familiar. After scrolling through the company directory, I recognized her. Isabella Martinez, a former marketing executive who had left Horizon suddenly about a year ago. At the time, the official explanation was that she had received an amazing opportunity abroad. Now I wondered if there was more to that story. The betrayal cut deep, not just of his wife and the company's trust, but of my own faith in him as a mentor. All those times he had praised my work and encouraged my career, had he simply been grooming me as a useful accomplice, someone who would process his fraudulent expenses without question. The thought made me feel physically ill. That night, I barely slept. My mind raced with questions and fears. What if I was misinterpreting the evidence? What if Marcus had explanations for everything? And more terrifying, what if I was right? Whistleblowers often faced retaliation even when they were acting in the company's best interest. I thought about my single-bedroom apartment, my student loans, my elderly mother whose medical bills I helped with. Could I risk my financial security? But could I live with myself? If I stayed silent? By morning, I had made my decision. I would confront Marcus directly before taking this hire. Perhaps there was a legitimate explanation I had overlooked. I owed him that much given our history. I just did not realize how skillfully he would try to turn the tables on me. I called Marcus the next day, calculating the time difference to ensure I would not be waking him in the middle of the night in Paris. The phone rang several times before he answered. "Amelia, is something wrong?" His voice sounded relaxed, not at all like someone in the middle of intense business negotiations. "Sorry to bother you during your investor meetings," I began carefully. "There are some discrepancies in the quarterly report I am preparing, and I thought you might be able to clarify them." What kind of discrepancies? A new edge had entered his voice. "Some expense allocations do not seem to match our records. There are also some duplicate submissions for travel expenses that total quite a significant amount." In the background, I could hear what sounded like waves and faint music, not the atmosphere of a business conference or meeting room. "Are you actually in Paris?" I asked before I could stop myself. The line went silent for a moment. "Of course I am. I am just taking a call outside because the conference room is too noisy." His tone had hardened. "Amelia, I am disappointed. I trusted you to handle a simple task, not waste time nitpicking routine expenses that have already been approved." $320,000 is not nitpicking, I said, finding courage I did not know I had. And many of these expenses were never properly approved. "Listen to me very carefully," Marcus said, his voice now dangerously calm. "You are stepping into matters you do not understand and making accusations that could damage both our reputations. I suggest you focus on the task I assigned you and leave the executive expenses to those qualified to manage them. But the board presentation will be handled exactly as I instructed, he cut me off. If you cannot follow simple directions, perhaps we need to reevaluate your role in this department. 7 years at the company does not make you irreplaceable, Amelia. The threat was unmistakable. My hands were shaking when the call ended. Within an hour, I received a terse email from Marcus stating he was cutting his trip short due to my concerns and would be back in the office the following day to address these misunderstandings in person. When Marcus returned, he brought with him a storm. He immediately called me into a conference room where, to my surprise, Diana from Human Resources and Brian Parker from Legal were already seated. Amelia has raised some concerns about expense, reporting that I want to address transparently. Marcus began all professional concern. Unfortunately, I believe her misunderstanding stems from her limited exposure to executive-level business development activities. For the next hour, he systematically dismantled my credibility. He explained away every discrepancy I had found with plausible business justifications. The extended hotel stay's valuable networking opportunities. The companion in his photos? A potential European investor he was showing American hospitality. The duplicate expenses, a technical error in the reporting system that finance had already identified and was correcting. Brian nodded along, occasionally making notes. Diana watched me with a mixture of sympathy and skepticism. Neither challenged Marcus directly. I am concerned about Amelia's recent behavior, Marcus continued. She has been working unusual hours, accessing files outside her direct responsibilities, and now making unfounded accusations that could damage company relationships. I wonder if the pressure of her current role is becoming too much. I sat there feeling ambushed and undermined. Everything was being twisted. My investigation portrayed as unstable behavior, my concerns dismissed as incompetence, my late hours depicted as suspicious rather than dedicated. Over the next few days, the isolation grew. Colleagues who normally stopped by my desk suddenly found reasons to email instead. Conversations in the break room would pause when I entered. Marcus had systematically seeded doubt about my reliability. He also began monitoring me more closely. I would look up to find him watching me from across the office. My computer showed signs of having been accessed when I was away from my desk. Files I had saved were moved or renamed. In a particularly bold move, Marcus called me into his office to discuss my performance. I have always supported your career, Amelia, he said with practiced concern. But lately your focus seems scattered. Several team members have expressed concerns about your behavior. Which team members? I challenged. I cannot break confidences, he replied smoothly. But I am worried about you. Perhaps you should consider taking some time off. Or maybe this level of responsibility is coming too soon in your career. I left his office seething but determined. His attempts to discredit me only confirmed my suspicions. If there was nothing to hide, why work so hard to silence me? My one potential ally, Diana from Human Resources, proved disappointing. When I requested a private meeting to discuss workplace concerns, she listened politely but offered little support. These are serious allegations, Amelia, she said, after I had laid out some of my findings, carefully avoiding revealing the full extent of what I knew. But without concrete evidence, it becomes a case of your interpretation against that of a senior executive with an impeccable record. So you are taking his side without even investigating? I asked incredulously. Diana's expression tightened. I am not taking sides. I am explaining the reality of the situation. Marcus has brought significant business to this company. The board trusts him. If you pursue this without irrefutable evidence, it will not end well for your career. As I left her office, I realized I was truly on my own. The system was designed to protect those in power. If I wanted justice, I would need to build a case so strong that even Marcus's considerable charm and influence could not deflect it. And I would need to be smarter about how I gathered my evidence. Marcus was watching me now, which meant I had to be extremely careful. The stakes had just gotten much higher. That night, I made 3 important decisions. First, I would create secure backups of everything I had found so far. Second, I would find allies outside of Marcus's sphere of influence. And third, I would build my case methodically, leaving no room for his manipulations. I purchased an external hard drive with cache and copied all my evidence, storing it in my apartment rather than at the office. I also encrypted key files and stored them in a personal cloud account Marcus could not access. My next step was more risky, approaching James Whitman, the chief financial officer. As Marcus's superior, James had the authority to investigate, but he could also shut me down immediately if he chose to protect Marcus. I requested a 15-minute meeting, keeping the subject vague, financial reporting consistency questions. To my surprise, James agreed to see me the following morning. The CFO's office was minimalist and organized, reflecting his straightforward approach to business. He gestured for me to take a seat while finishing an email. "So, Amelia, what reporting inconsistencies are you seeing?" he asked, giving me his full attention. I had prepared carefully for this moment, bringing only the most indisputable evidence. "I have identified a pattern of expense misrepresentation that I believe warrants further investigation." I began, keeping my voice steady as I presented the documentation. James reviewed the materials silently, his expression giving nothing away. After several minutes, he looked up. "What made you notice these particular transactions?" It was not the response I had expected. Not immediate dismissal, but not immediate concern either. They fell outside our standard expense patterns. When I investigated further, I found systematic discrepancies between reported business purposes and actual activities. James leaned back in his chair. "You realize you are making serious allegations against your direct supervisor?" "I do," I replied. "That is why I have been thorough in my analysis. This is not about personal grievances. The numbers speak for themselves." Something shifted in his expression. "Leave these with me. Do not discuss this with anyone else for now. I will look into it and get back to you." I left feeling cautiously optimistic, but unsure where I stood. Had I just gained an ally or dug myself deeper into trouble? While waiting for James's response, I continued my investigation discreetly. I searched company records for more information about Isabella Martinez, the woman in Marcus's photos. Her departure had been abrupt with minimal transition planning despite her senior position. Unusual for a company that typically had elaborate knowledge transfer procedures. Through LinkedIn, I connected with Lisa Chen, who had worked closely with Isabella. We met for coffee on a Saturday, safely away from corporate eyes. Isabella's departure was weird, Lisa confirmed, stirring her latte. One day she was leading the European marketing strategy, the next she was gone. The official story was a dream job offer, but she never updated her professional profiles with any new position. "Did she and Marcus work together often?" I asked casually. Lisa gave me a knowing look. Everyone noticed their close relationship. Closed-door meetings, business trips together. Office gossip suggested it was more than professional. But nobody had proof. "Why are you asking about this now?" I was careful with my response, just trying to understand some historical project allocations. Isabella's name keeps coming up in relation to European market initiatives that now seem abandoned. Lisa hesitated before speaking again. There was one strange thing. After Isabella left, I overheard Marcus arguing with someone in finance about consultant payments to a company called Azure Ventures. He was insisting they needed to continue despite there being no deliverables. When I asked about it later, he said it was confidential and not to mention it again. This was the lead I needed. Back at home, I searched for Azure Ventures and discovered it was registered just 2 weeks before Isabella's departure. The business address was a virtual office service, but one of the incorporation documents contained a contact email that looked familiar. It was a variation of Isabella's personal email that she had once used to send team birthday invitations. The pieces were falling into place. Marcus had set up Isabella with a consulting company and was funneling money to her disguised as business expenses. But I needed more proof to connect everything definitively. My break came from an unexpected source. An anonymous email arrived in my work inbox with the subject line, RE Expense Verification. The message was brief. Not everyone is blind to what is happening. Storage room B, filing cabinet 3, drawer 2. Look for the blue folder. It was risky. This could be genuine information or a trap set by Marcus to catch me snooping where I should not be. After weighing the options, I decided to check during lunch when most people were out of the office. Storage room B was in a rarely visited part of the building. Inside, I quickly located the specified cabinet. The blue folder was labeled Special Projects Reconciliation. Inside were printouts of emails between Marcus and Isabella discussing payments and meeting arrangements. Most damningly, there were handwritten notes outlining how to categorize personal expenses as business costs. As I was photographing these documents with my phone, the storage room door opened. My heart nearly stopped until I saw it was Stephanie Wilson, Marcus's executive assistant. Her expression showed no surprise at finding me there. "So you got my email," she said quietly, closing the door behind her. "You sent it." I was shocked. Stephanie had always seemed fiercely loyal to Marcus. She nodded grimly. "I have been covering for him for too long. The lies, the manipulated records, the constant fear of being caught. I cannot do it anymore." Over the next hour, Stephanie revealed the full extent of Marcus's scheme. How she had been coerced into helping alter records, make false bookings, and create fake meeting agendas to cover his absences. How Isabella had not left voluntarily, but had been set up with her own company as part of an arrangement after threatening to expose their affair to his wife and the board. "It started small," Stephanie explained. "Personal expenses mixed with business ones. Then the fake consultant payments to friends. Then the full-blown scheme with Isabella. I have been keeping my own records because I knew someday it would all come crashing down. I did not want to go down with him." With Stephanie's information, I now understood exactly how Marcus had executed his fraud. He had created a network of fake consultants, including Isabella through Azure Ventures. He doubled and sometimes tripled dipped on expense reports, charging the same trips to multiple departments or projects. He extended business trips for personal pleasure but billed all expenses to the company. And he falsified meeting records to justify it all. Working late nights and weekends, I compiled everything into a comprehensive report, organizing the evidence chronologically and by type of fraud. The total misappropriated funds had now reached $320,400 over 18 months, a staggering amount, even for an executive with signing authority. Then came a key development. Marcus announced that an urgent off-site meeting would prevent him from attending the upcoming board presentation. Instead, I would present the quarterly financials in his place. This was the opportunity I had been waiting for. "Stick to the standard format," he instructed, sending me a template. "Just the high-level numbers. We can go into detail at the next meeting when I am there." What Marcus did not know was that James had been quietly investigating my claims. The day before the board meeting, he called me into his office. "I have verified enough of your findings to take this seriously," he said, his expression grave. "The board needs to see this. Are you prepared to present the full picture tomorrow?" I nodded, feeling both vindicated and terrified. "I have everything documented and organized." "Good," James replied. "Because once this starts, there will be no going back. Are you sure you are ready for what comes next?" I thought about all the sleepless nights, the stress, the isolation, and Marcus's attempts to destroy my credibility and career. Absolutely. That night, I rehearsed my presentation repeatedly, anticipating every possible question and objection. This would be the most important presentation of my career, and I had one chance to get it right. The boardroom at Horizon Innovations, intimidated by design. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered spectacular city views, while the massive mahogany table gleamed under recessed lighting. Oil paintings of former chairpersons lined one wall, their stern expressions seeming to judge everyone who entered. I arrived 30 minutes early to set up and calm my nerves. My presentation was loaded back up, Copies were available, and I had rehearsed until every word felt natural. Still, my hands trembled slightly as I arranged my materials. Board members began arriving in groups of 2s and 3s. Most knew me only vaguely, if at all. I was usually the person preparing slides for Marcus, not presenting them. James nodded reassuringly as he took his seat at the right hand of Chairwoman Victoria Bennett, a formidable former tech CEO known for her sharp questions and low tolerance for nonsense. "I understand Marcus is unavailable today." Victoria began once everyone was seated. "Something about an urgent client situation." "Yes," I confirmed. "He sent his apologies. He had an unexpected off-site meeting that could not be rescheduled." Victoria raised an eyebrow but moved on. "Then let us proceed with the quarterly review. Amelia, you have the floor." I began with the standard financial overview exactly as Marcus would have wanted. Revenue growth, market expansion, cost management, all presented clearly, but without drawing special attention to any particular area. The board members followed along occasionally, asking clarifying questions that I answered competently. For the first 20 minutes, it was a normal board presentation, but my heart raced as I approached the critical transition point. Everything would change with the next slide. "Before we conclude the financial review, there is an important matter regarding expense management that requires the board's immediate attention," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. James gave me a subtle nod. We had discussed this moment, and he was prepared to support my findings. During routine quarterly preparation, I identified concerning patterns in executive expense reporting. I continued switching to the slide I had carefully prepared, but not shown to anyone except James. On the screen appeared a detailed breakdown of Marcus's fraudulent expenses, categorized by type and with comparison to company policy. The total at the bottom read $320,400. The reaction was immediate. Several board members leaned forward, frowning at the figures. The CFO, despite being prepared, visibly paled at seeing the full extent laid out. Victoria Bennett's expression hardened as she studied the numbers. "These are very specific allegations," she said, her tone measured. "What evidence supports these figures?" This was the moment I had prepared for. I distributed folders containing key documentation, including bank records, altered receipts, falsified meeting agendas, and photos from Marcus's supposed business trips. "The evidence suggests a systematic pattern of expense manipulation," I explained, walking them through the methodology of the fraud. "Business trips extended for personal vacations, but fully charged to the company. Duplicate submissions of the same expenses across different departments. Payments to fake consulting companies that provide no actual services." I brought up the photos showing Marcus with Isabella at beach resorts during supposed investor meetings. These were taken during claimed business trips to Paris, Tokyo, and Singapore, according to expense reports. However, geolocation data shows these locations as Bali, Maldives, and Phuket instead. Victoria studied the photos carefully, and this woman is Isabella Martinez, former marketing director who left suddenly last year. She now receives consulting payments through a company called Azure Ventures, which was established 2 weeks before her departure. The chairwoman's eyes narrowed. "Is she with him right now? On this urgent meeting he is attending instead of this board presentation?" Before I could answer, my phone vibrated with an incoming call. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. James spoke up. "Perhaps we should hear from Marcus directly." He gestured for me to answer and put it on speaker. With shaking hands, I accepted the call. "Hello, Marcus. I have you on speakerphone in the boardroom. The entire board is present." There was a moment of confused silence before Marcus responded, his voice artificially cheerful. "I was just checking in on how the presentation was going. Any questions I can address remotely?" "Actually, yes," Victoria interjected. "We are reviewing some concerning expense patterns that Amelia has brought to our attention. We were hoping you could provide context for approximately $320,000 in questionable charges over the past 18 months. Another pause, longer this time. In the background, faint music and what sounded like ocean waves could be heard. "I am not sure what Amelia has told you," Marcus finally said, his tone defensive, "but there seems to be a serious misunderstanding. All my expenses are legitimate business costs, properly approved and documented, including the five-star resort in Bali, where you are right now, rather than at the Paris Investor Conference listed on your official schedule, James asked pointedly. The silence that followed was deafening. When Marcus spoke again, his voice had changed completely. The charm was gone, replaced with cold anger. This is ridiculous. Amelia clearly has a personal vendetta because of recent performance feedback. These accusations are defamatory and will not stand up to scrutiny. When I return tomorrow, I expect a full retraction and apology. Victoria remained unimpressed. What we have seen today goes well beyond misunderstanding Marcus. The documentation is extensive and compelling. We will be conducting a full forensic audit immediately. Until that process is complete, consider yourself suspended. Please do not return to the office tomorrow. Security will meet you to collect your company property. You cannot be serious, Marcus sputtered. Based on some manipulated evidence from a junior analyst with an agenda, I have built relationships worth millions for this company. The numbers we are seeing suggest you have also cost this company hundreds of thousands, Victoria replied calmly. The board will meet in executive session immediately following this call to determine next steps. Goodbye, Marcus. She nodded to me, and I ended the call. The room fell silent as the magnitude of what had just transpired sank in. After a moment, Victoria turned to me. That took considerable courage. How long have you been investigating this? Actively, about 3 weeks, I answered. But the inconsistencies had been bothering me for longer. I just did not have the full picture until recently. Has he threatened you or attempted to interfere with your investigation? I described Marcus's attempts to discredit me, the meeting with human resources, and legal design to intimidate me, and the subtle workplace isolation I had experienced. The board members exchanged concerned glances. This was clearly bigger than just financial fraud. It revealed systemic failures in oversight and corporate culture. Thank you for your integrity, Victoria said finally. The board will need to address this immediately. Please make yourself available for the investigation team that will be assembled. James, please stay for the executive session. Amelia, you are excused for now, but please do not discuss this with anyone else until further notice. As I gathered my materials with shaking hands, several board members nodded respectfully in my direction. I had done it. Against intimidation, gaslighting, and systematic attempts to undermine me, I had brought the truth to light. But as the adrenaline of the confrontation began to fade, new worries emerged. What would happen next? How would the company respond? And what retaliation might still come from Marcus, whose career I had just effectively ended? The aftermath began unfolding almost immediately. As I returned to my desk, a company-wide email arrived from Victoria Bennett, announcing Marcus's immediate administrative leave pending an internal investigation. No details were provided, but the abruptness spoke volumes. Within an hour, rumors were swirling through every department. I maintained my silence, as instructed, focusing on my regular work while avoiding the curious glances and whispered conversations around me. Just after lunch, I witnessed Marcus being escorted to his office by 2 security personnel. His face was tight with barely controlled rage as he collected personal items under supervision. As he was leaving, Marcus spotted me watching and detoured in my direction. Security moved to intercept him, but he raised his hands to indicate he just wanted to speak. Happy now, he hissed, keeping his voice low but intense. You had 7 good years here because of me. I made your career, and this is how you repay loyalty. You have no idea what you have started. Before I could respond, security guided him away. His parting glare contained a promise of retaliation that sent a chill through me, despite the office's warm temperature. Richard approached my desk after Marcus had gone. I just heard fragments from different sources. Did you actually expose him at the board meeting? I nodded slightly, still processing the confrontation. That took incredible courage, Richard said quietly. Not everyone would have stood their ground against someone that powerful. Whatever happens next, remember that. The following day brought a parade of meetings with various investigators. External auditors had been called in to conduct a comprehensive review of all financial records. The legal team needed my statement about everything I had uncovered and Marcus's attempts to silence me. Human Resources interviewed me about the workplace intimidation I had experienced. Diana from HR, who had previously seemed unwilling to help now, appeared eager to establish that she had taken appropriate actions. I want to clarify that when you came to me with concerns, they were presented as general questions rather than specific allegations of fraud, she said, clearly worried about her own position. I chose not to contradict her directly. Office politics would continue long after this investigation concluded, and I still needed to work here. The most surprising conversation came from James, who called me into his office late that afternoon. The initial forensic review has already identified additional irregularities beyond what you discovered, he informed me, looking both impressed and troubled. Marcus apparently had several schemes running simultaneously. The total misappropriation might exceed $500,000 when everything is uncovered. What happens now? I asked. The company has contacted law enforcement, James replied. This goes beyond internal discipline at this point. And we have located Isabella Martinez. She is cooperating in exchange for immunity, providing details about her arrangement with Marcus. That evening, I received several angry text messages from Marcus. You have ruined my life over a few travel upgrades, the first one read. My family is being destroyed because you could not mind your own business, came another. The final one was more ominous. People like you always get what they deserve eventually. Remember that. I reported the messages to James and the legal team, who advised me to save them as evidence, but not respond. They also arranged for a security service to check on my apartment, periodically recognizing that Marcus's threats, however vague, should be taken seriously. Over the next few weeks, the company implemented dramatic changes to financial controls. New approval processes were established for expenses over certain thresholds. Random audits became standard practice. The board created an anonymous whistleblower hotline for reporting concerns without fear of retaliation. I found myself in an awkward position within the company. Some colleagues treated me with new respect, seeing my actions as courageous. Others seemed uncomfortable around me, perhaps, wondering if their own actions might someday be scrutinized. A few of Marcus's close allies were openly hostile, suggesting I had exaggerated minor issues to advance my own career. The external validation came unexpectedly. The Association of Corporate Financial Oversight invited me to speak at their annual conference about identifying warning signs of executive fraud. Business journals reached out for interviews about corporate accountability and ethical leadership. I declined most of these, preferring to focus on rebuilding my work environment rather than becoming the public face of corporate whistleblowing. About a month after the board meeting, I was copied on an email announcing formal termination proceedings against Marcus, citing gross misconduct and financial impropriety. The company was also pursuing civil recovery of misappropriated funds. Criminal charges were being considered by the district attorney's office. That same day, Victoria Bennett requested a meeting with me. Her office was even more impressive than the boardroom, with awards and recognition plaques lining the walls. The board asked me to personally convey our appreciation for your integrity, she began. Not many people would have pursued this matter as diligently as you did, especially given the personal risk. I just did what seemed right, I replied honestly. That is precisely the point, Victoria said. Doing the right thing when it is difficult is the true test of character. Too many people convince themselves that looking the other way is easier or not their responsibility. You chose differently. She slid a folder across her desk. The board has approved a special recognition bonus and an immediate promotion to Director of Financial Compliance, reporting directly to James. We are creating this position specifically to strengthen our oversight and prevent similar situations in the future. We believe you are uniquely qualified for it. The validation and recognition were overwhelming after weeks of stress and uncertainty. As I left Victoria's office with the offer letter, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, pride, and lingering anxiety about the future. Marcus was gone, but the ripple effects of his actions and my response would continue for a long time. I still had moments of doubt and fear. Had I done enough? Too much? Would there be unforeseen consequences? But beneath these concerns was a growing certainty that I had stood up for what was right, regardless of personal cost. And that, I was beginning to realize, was its own form of success. 6 months later, I settled into my new office on the executive floor. The view was not as spectacular as Marcus's had been, but the position came with something more valuable than corner office real estate, real authority to implement change. As Director of Financial Compliance, I had spent my first months developing new systems to prevent the kind of fraud Marcus had perpetrated. We implemented artificial intelligence tools to flag unusual spending patterns. We rotated responsibility for approving executive expenses. We created separation between those who submitted expenses and those who reviewed them. Your 3 signatures policy has everyone grumbling. Richard joked during our weekly coffee meetup. He had been promoted to lead the financial analysis team after my move to compliance. But even the complainers admit it makes sense. Grumbling is fine as long as the system works, I replied with a smile. The goal is not to make expense reporting pleasant, but to make fraud impossible. News about Marcus arrived periodically. He had accepted a plea deal to avoid jail time, agreeing to full restitution plus penalties. His professional reputation was destroyed. No financial firm would touch him now. According to industry gossip, he was trying to rebuild in another sector, entirely selling luxury real estate in a different state. Isabella had faced fewer consequences, having cooperated fully with investigators. She had returned most of the consulting payments and provided detailed testimony about how the scheme operated. Last I heard, she had moved abroad and was trying to restart her career far from the shadow of the scandal. The most challenging part of the aftermath was rebuilding relationships with colleagues who had sided with Marcus during the investigation. Some eventually came around, especially as the full extent of his deception became clear. Others maintained a professional distance, perhaps still loyal to him, or embarrassed by their own failure to see what was happening. Theodore Miller, one of Marcus's strongest defenders, surprised me by stopping by my office one afternoon. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "I thought you were exaggerating minor expense issues to take down someone successful. I was wrong, and I treated you unfairly because of it." His candor caught me off guard. "Thank you for saying that. It cannot have been easy." Theodore shrugged. "Not as hard as what you did. Standing alone is always harder than following the crowd. I hope I would have had the courage to do what you did, but honestly, I am not sure I would have." These moments of reconciliation helped heal the workplace divisions. Gradually, the scandal became part of company history rather than its daily reality. New projects and challenges took precedence over rehashing the past. My personal healing took longer. For weeks after Marcus's departure, I would tense up whenever an unexpected email arrived or when someone approached my desk suddenly. The stress of the investigation and confrontation had left invisible marks that faded slowly over time. I found comfort in mentoring junior staff about ethical financial practices. Teaching others to recognize red flags and trust their instincts helped reinforce my own confidence in the decisions I had made. The most important lesson I told a group of new hires during orientation is that integrity is not a theoretical concept. It is a practical choice you make daily, sometimes at personal cost. The question is not whether you value honesty in the abstract, but whether you will choose it when dishonesty seems easier or safer. Victoria invited me to present to the board quarterly about compliance improvements. During one such meeting, she made an observation that stayed with me. "What strikes me about this whole situation," she said thoughtfully, "is how many opportunities there were to stop it earlier. How many people noticed something wrong, but convinced themselves it was not their problem or not important enough to mention. The failure was not just in our systems, but in our culture." She was right. A culture of looking the other way had enabled Marcus as much as inadequate financial controls had. Changing that culture became my mission beyond the technical aspects of compliance. On a personal level, the experience transformed me in ways I had not anticipated. I developed a clearer sense of my own boundaries and values. I became more confident in my professional judgment. And I learned that doing the right thing while difficult in the moment brought a lasting peace that no amount of compromise could provide. There were still difficult days. Occasionally, I would question my decisions or wonder about alternative paths I might have taken. But these moments of doubt grew less frequent as I witnessed the positive changes at Horizon Innovations. Our company now had the strongest ethical compliance program in the industry. Employees at all levels felt empowered to raise concerns without fear of retaliation. We had transformed a scandal into a case study of corporate resilience and renewal. 1 year after the board meeting that changed everything, I received an email from a former colleague who had moved to another company. You would not believe who applied for a senior position here, it read. Marcus Reynolds. He did not mention Horizon on his resume, but someone recognized his name. Application rejected immediately. Word gets around. I felt no satisfaction at his continued downfall, only a quiet acknowledgement that accountability, while sometimes delayed, eventually arrives. My goal had never been to ruin Marcus's life, only to stop the harm he was causing and protect the company I had dedicated years to building. Looking back, I realized that the most valuable lesson from this experience was learning to trust myself. All the evidence had been there from the beginning. My instincts had been correct. The doubts came not from the facts, but from the pressure to conform, to look the other way, to prioritize career safety over truth. In challenging Marcus, I had found my own voice and purpose. The path had been difficult and frightening at times, but I would choose it again without hesitation. Integrity might be tested in dramatic moments of choice, but it is built through countless smaller decisions to stand firm when it would be easier to bend. Have you ever faced a situation where you knew something was wrong, but speaking up felt risky? How did you handle it, and what did you learn from the experience? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to see more content about workplace ethics and personal integrity. And if you know someone facing a difficult ethical decision, consider sharing this video with them as encouragement. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your inner voice is often right, even when everyone else is telling you to doubt it.